Welcome to today's explainer. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever walked away from a social interaction feeling completely, utterly drained, even though you barely spoke a single word? Well, if you find yourself constantly absorbing other people's stories while your own voice kind of just fades into the background, I want you to know you are absolutely not alone. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating source text that digs deep into the hidden psychological mechanics of being what they call the chronic listener. And honestly, it completely validates that heavy, hidden emotional exhaustion you might be feeling after constantly playing the role of sounding board for everyone else in your life. Okay, let's dive right into this and figure out exactly why some of us get trapped in this dynamic, and more importantly, how we can actually protect our energy. There is this one quote from our source material that just hits the nail on the head. It says, "Every time I devote myself to listening, another piece of baggage I can't hand to anyone piles up in my heart." You know, it's not that you dislike talking to people. In fact, you might genuinely love connecting with others. But as the relationship deepens, this subtle, invisible weight just starts to accumulate. You listen, the other person leaves feeling super satisfied, and you're just standing there, left holding a piece of emotional luggage that isn't even yours.
So, here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll uncover the true identity of the listener. Second, we'll look at what actually happens when our emotional water tank overflows. Third, we're going to talk about the invisible costs in conversation. And finally, we'll wrap up with the listener's pride and the art of self-disclosure.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the true identity of the listener and exactly why we get trapped. So, why do certain individuals end up perpetually stuck on the receiving end of a conversation? Well, it actually often starts as a well-intentioned survival mechanism. You see, mundane small talk, like chatting about the weather or just giving super generic life updates, it literally lacks the nutritional value required to keep our brains engaged. It's the conversational equivalent of eating plain rice cakes. So to keep your brain from completely falling asleep, you start digging. You ask deep, probing questions because you're trying to find something, anything interesting to stimulate your own mind. You just want to uncover a unique story. But here's the catch. By doing this, you accidentally train the other person to talk endlessly about themselves, which completely traps you right back in that listener role. And by asking those deep questions, you end up creating this glaring imbalance. The speaker gets to vent, share their feelings, and feel totally validated. They walk away feeling relieved, light, and totally energized. But you, the listener, you're secretly bored out of your mind, working incredibly hard to fake continuous interest and accumulating a massive amount of hidden fatigue. You're doing all the conversational heavy lifting, but only one person is actually getting the reward. Now, the moment you try to fix this imbalance, boom, you hit a wall. Our source describes a painfully real, instantaneous feedback loop called the role reversal dilemma. Just imagine, you finally decide to share your own story with the exact same passion and energy the speaker just used, but the second you start, you notice the speaker's expression suddenly cloud over. They look tired, or maybe just checked out. Instantly, your brain starts blaring alarm bells. Am I being a burden right now? Do I just want to talk too much? Rather than sitting with that super uncomfortable doubt, you do what feels safe. You retreat. You fall right back into the listener role, the speaker perks right back up, and the exhausting cycle just keeps going. Moving on to Section 2, when the emotional water tank overflows. Let's look at the real emotional consequences here. So, what are the long-term consequences of this continuous retreat? Well, our source introduces this incredibly powerful metaphor for how we process all of this absorbed information. They call it the storage tank, or chozui tanku in Japanese. When you take on that noble stance of being the ultimate confidant, never gossiping, always keeping everyone's secrets, you basically transform your own mind into a massive storage tank. You are literally absorbing everyone else's daily frustrations, their hidden lives, all their baggage. But because you constantly retreat from sharing your own life, your tank has absolutely no outlet valve. It just keeps expanding and expanding, which creates this profound, incredibly isolating sense of loneliness. And this is where the heartbreak truly lies. Because you are so used to carrying around this massive, heavy tank, the moment you finally meet someone who actually seems willing to listen to you, which might only be one or two people in a lifetime, a tragedy happens. You're so thrilled to have finally found a safe harbor that the pressure valve just blows. Years and years of suppressed thoughts and emotions explode all at once. And ironically, this sudden, massive flood can overwhelm and accidentally scare that rare, safe person completely away. You see that disappointment in their eyes, and it only reinforces your worst fear, that you should have just stayed quiet in the first place. Let's jump into Section 3,
the invisible costs in conversation, or really, the actual price of listening.
It's such a vicious cycle, right? So how on earth do we break it? Well, first, we have to stop pretending that listening is just some passive, effortless activity. Our source presents this genuinely fascinating thought experiment. If someone offered to pay you 1,000 yen, which is roughly $7 to $10, for an hour of your time just to sit and listen to them talk, most people would gladly accept it. But why? Because we implicitly understand that listening is a real service. It requires labor, focus, and energy. It literally has an actual cost. Yet, in our everyday lives, we offer up this taxing service entirely for free, over and over again, and then we sit around wondering why we feel so incredibly depleted. The whole relationship is just fundamentally asymmetrical. Now, because the chronic listener realizes on a deeply subconscious level just how costly their attention is, they start to develop these hypervigilant habits to protect whatever energy they have left. The source notes that you actually start judging people the second you meet them. Within just a single exchange, your brain is running a rapid-fire background check. You're asking yourself, do they have their own identity? Are they approaching me with fake humility just so they can dump their problems on me? Are they talking down to me to mask their own insecurities? You're making all these split-second assessments to decide if this person is actually safe to engage with, all to prevent your storage tank from being filled up with even more unwanted junk. But here is how this defensive strategy builds into an ironic trap. Because you're so hypervigilant and so afraid of getting stuck with an energy vampire, you might adopt a purely passive strategy. You tell yourself, I'm just going to wait until someone talks to me. But waiting to be spoken to often attracts the exact type of people you are desperately trying to avoid. The most overpowering, demanding, and self-centered personalities out there are usually the ones who have absolutely no problem initiating a conversation and dominating the entire space. By playing it too safe, you're actually lowering your chances of meeting a balanced, thoughtful conversationalist. And that brings us to our final section, Section 4, Listener's Pride and Self-Disclosure. So if retreating doesn't work and waiting doesn't work, what actually does? Instead of feeling like you're a victim of your own conversational skills, the text suggests this really radical mindset shift. Quote, if they are a narcissist of speaking, I will be a narcissist of listening. I mean, really think about that for a second. You have this incredible ability to make people feel comfortable, to draw out their stories, and to create an environment where they feel completely validated. Instead of resenting this, you can actively choose to find value in your mastery of the craft. You aren't just a passive sponge, you are a highly skilled facilitator. Shifting to this mindset of elite pride can significantly ease that daily friction and exhaustion you feel. But of course, you still need to empty your tank, right? You still need to be heard. The key is figuring out how to do it without stepping on those conversational landmines we talked about earlier. The source recommends something called the art of proportional disclosure. It's kind of like pressing the brake and the accelerator at the exact same time. It takes some finesse. Step 1, don't force your story. Just wait for the speaker's natural silence or wait for them to actually ask you a direct question. Step 2, when they finally do, you have to resist the urge to dump your entire emotional tank all at once. Remember the tragedy of the rare listener. And step 3, share quietly and proportionally. Instead of completely hijacking the topic, just softly integrate your experience by saying something like, actually, me too, and offering just a small, highly relatable piece of your reality. You know, the absolute most comforting takeaway from this entire material is the reassurance that your survival mechanisms are not inherently wrong. It is perfectly, completely okay to adopt a stance where you just accept those who come to you, let go of those who leave, and strictly protect your boundaries. You really don't have to be everything to everyone. You can let others do all the talking while you keep your own disclosure minimal. At the end of the day, you only truly need to hold out for that one or maybe two rare, completely safe connections in your life where the balance just feels natural. We have definitely covered a ton of ground today in this explainer, from the nutritional value of small talk to the heavy weight of our emotional storage tanks, and finally, to really taking pride in the high-cost skill of listening. So I want to leave you with this question to ponder as you step back out into the world. How are you going to balance your conversational energy and protect your own storage tank in your very next interaction? Will you be a proud narcissist of listening, or will you practice proportional disclosure? The choice, and honestly, the power, is entirely yours. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.